The prayer will be offered by Chaplain Kibben.
Would you pray with me? God of power and might, mercy and peace, we raise our voices on behalf of all those who have cried for so long that their voices are weary and their words are faint. Especially on this 4th anniversary of the enduring conflict in Ukraine, let not their hearts fear. Though war has risen up against them without cease or cause, even still may they remain confident that you are their light and salvation. Lord, be the stronghold that pushes back the enemy's relentless campaign against them. Hide them in the shelter of your sanctuary in these endless days of trouble. Then lift up their voices as they testify to the world their faith in you. Even as they refuse to give up their will to their adversaries, may their confidence in you serve as a testimony to all of us. As they wait for you, may their faith be strong and their hearts take courage, that all may know that our salvation is found only in you. Sovereign God, may all who believe in you when enemies encamp against us see your goodness, O Lord, in our lifetime. Hear the fervent prayers of all who call on your name these days. Amen.
Amen. The chair has examined the journal of the last day's proceedings and announces to the House the approval thereof. Pursuant to Clause 1 of Rule 1, the journal stands approved. The gentleman from North Carolina, Mr. Davis, will lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Please join me in the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice.
The chair will entertain up to 15 requests on each side of the aisle. For what purposes does the gentleman from South Carolina seek recognition? Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. President Trump is delivering real relief for families in the form of lower costs for everyday items, creating jobs. Wages are growing faster than prices, pulling more money into the pockets of Americans. Year-over-year inflation fell to 2.4% in January, marking a new low. Core inflation has dropped to the lowest level in 5 years, underscoring progress made by Donald Trump. In the first Trump year, real earnings for workers have outpaced inflation by $1,400, earning back some of the $3,000 they lost under Biden. Key prices are falling in January. Beef, eggs, and coffee prices all decline. The interest rates are down for home building. Gasoline prices are falling. Promises made, promises kept. In conclusion, God bless our troops as the global war on terrorism continues. Trump is reinstituting peace through strength, revealing war criminal Putin lies, insulting Trump and mocking Trump. As we now see war criminal Putin is entering into the 4th anniversary of the Putin invasion today, which he lied to his troops would be a 30-day special mission. Courageous Ukrainians, with President Vladimir Zelensky, will be victorious over mass murderer Vladimir Putin. I yield back.
For what purpose does the gentlewoman from Illinois seek recognition?
Unanimous consent to address the floor for 1 minute and to revise and consent my remarks.
Without objection, the gentlewoman is recognized for 1 minute.
Mr. Speaker, I rise today to honor Ahmad Rehab, a fearless advocate and leader. Ahmad's career reflects his courage, clarity, and conviction. For more than 2 decades, Ahmad has defended our civil rights and protected our Muslim and immigrant neighbors and communities. While he is currently the executive director of the Chicago Office of CARE, the nation's largest Muslim civic liberties and advocacy group, he has served on the board of the Illinois Coalition of Immigrant and Refugee Rights, the Chicago Council on Global Affairs Muslim Task Force, and in many other leadership roles. He is committed to building multi-faith, multi-sector coalitions. And just last week at Illinois' third First Power of the People Summit, Ahmad reminding us that coalition is commitment. It means standing together before the storm, not just during it. It means being light in the midst of darkness. And so on behalf of Illinois' 3rd Congressional District, I am proud to commend Ahmed Rahab for his tireless defense of our civil liberties and for his wisdom that he brings to the work of solidarity and unity. Thank you, Ahmed. Congratulations. With that, Mr. Speaker, I yield back.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Minnesota seek recognition?
I ask unanimous consent to address the House for 1 minute to revise and extend my remarks.
Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise today to recognize the Rochester Area Chamber of Commerce and congratulate their organization on celebrating 160 years of support for local businesses and economic growth. Since 1866, the Rochester Area Chamber of Commerce has been a strong advocate for the business community, helping build the Rochester area into the epicenter of economic activity that it is today. For more than a century and a half, the Chamber has supported generations of entrepreneurs, employers, community members, and businesses across the Rochester community, shaping the economic development in our region with strong business advocacy, investments in workforce and professional development, and meaningful networking opportunities. I am thankful for the work of the Chamber members and their leaders and for the many contributions to fostering the connections that make Rochester community a great place to live, work, and do business. Congratulations to the entire Rochester Area Chamber of Commerce family on celebrating this incredible milestone, and I wish you continued success for the next 160 years and beyond. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I yield back.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Massachusetts seek recognition?
Consent to address the House for 1 minute and revise and extend my remarks.
Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Mr. Speaker, I recently had the pleasure of visiting Refectorio Harlem, an incredible nonprofit restaurant and food pantry in New York City. Refectorio Harlem is housed in the historic Emmanuel AME Church and is run by Free Food Harlem, with incredible partners like Food for Soul. 2 nights a week, chefs transform perfectly good but unused food into multi-course fine dining dishes, served free of charge to anyone in need. On Wednesday and Friday evenings, Refectorio is bustling with community and conversation as neighbors come together for a shared meal and a welcoming space. And during my visit, I tasted a delicious bowl of zero-waste ramen with glazed chicken and bok choy, perfect for a cold winter. Thank you to Jill, Matt, and Bob, and everyone at Refectorio for taking a few minutes during meal prep to show me around. Mr. Speaker, Refectorio Harlem is a spectacular example of what's possible when dedicated, like-minded people come together to not only fight hunger, but also combat food waste. We need to uplift more innovative models like Refectorio Harlem to end hunger now. I yield back.
For what purpose does the gentleman from North Carolina seek recognition? Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Mr. Speaker, an exceptional young leader from Eastern North Carolina, 17-year-old Nathaniel Simmons, is joining us as my guest for the State of the Union. Nathaniel, a senior at Metamuskeet High School, an 8th-generation farmer from Hyde County, the son of Benjamin and Tanya Simmons. Since the tender age of 9, he has passionately helped on the farm with his family, carrying on a legacy spanning generations. With about 15,000 farms closing this past year alone, we must support young next-generation farmers like Nathaniel. If we are to ensure our national security, we must recognize and invest in the hands that feed, clothe, and fuel our nation. Nathaniel, you are a true inspiration and a shining example of America's future. I'm honored to welcome you to our nation's capital. I yield back.
For what purpose does the gentlewoman from Michigan seek recognition? Without objection, the gentlewoman is recognized for 1 minute.
Resistance comes in different forms. Sometimes just our mere existence is resisting. I wanted to take a moment and recognize my guest for the State of the Union. Her name is Dr. Fatou Sadie Sarr, the founder and CEO of the African Bureau for Immigrant and Social Affairs in Detroit. I'm bringing her into this chamber this evening to uplift the work that she does in resisting the dehumanization of our beautiful immigrant neighbors. Originally from Senegal, she provides critical services to our Black immigrant families in the city of Detroit. She fights to secure basic needs like food, shelter, stability for our immigrant families who are often viewed as disposable by our own government. As a Black immigrant Muslim woman, she confronts injustices and refuses to be silent. She has also mentored so many incredible young Black girls to see themselves as leaders and change makers. Inspired by Detroit's Black women organizers, Sadie reminds us that in our community, we keep each other safe. In Wolof, she says, quote, "We must hold on to one another if we want to build a humanity we believe in, because it's not about me, it's about us, locked arm in arm."
For what purpose does the gentleman from Virginia seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, by the direction of the Committee on Rules, I call up House Resolution 1075 and ask for its immediate consideration.
The clerk will report the resolution.
House Calendar Number 62, House Resolution 1075. Resolved that upon adoption of this resolution, it shall be in order to consider in the House the bill, H.R. 4626, to amend the Energy Policy and Conservation Act to prohibit the Secretary of Energy from prescribing any new or amended energy conservation standard for a product that is not technologically feasible and economically justified and for other purposes. All points of order against consideration of the bill are waived. In lieu of the amendment in the nature of a substitute recommended by the Committee on Energy and Commerce now printed in the bill, an amendment in the nature of a substitute consisting of the text of Rules Committee Print 119-20 shall be considered as adopted. The bill as amended shall be considered as read. All points of order against provisions in the bill as amended are waived. The previous question shall be considered as order on the bill as amended, and on any further amendment thereto to final passage without intervening motion except one. 1 hour of debate, equally divided and controlled by the chair and ranking minority member of the Committee on Energy and Commerce or their respective designees, and 2, 1 motion to recommit. Section 2, upon adoption of this resolution, it shall be in order to consider in the House the bill, H.R. 4758, to repeal provisions of Public Law 117-169 relating to taxpayer subsidies for home electrification and for other purposes. All points of order against consideration of the bill are waived. The bill shall be considered as read. All points of order against provisions in the bill are waived. The previous question shall be considered as order on the bill, and on any amendment thereto to final passage without intervening motion except one. 1 hour of debate, equally divided and controlled by the chair and ranking minority member of the Committee on Energy and Commerce or their respective designees, and 2, 1 motion to recommit.
The gentleman from Virginia is recognized for 1 hour.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. For the purpose of debate only, I yield the customary 30 minutes to the gentleman from Massachusetts, pending which I yield myself such time as I may consume. During consideration of this resolution, all time yielded is for the purposes of debate only. Mr. Speaker, I ask unanimous consent that all members have 5 legislative days in which to revise and extend their remarks. The Rules Committee met and reported out a rule providing
Objection.
Thank you. The Rules Committee met and reported out a rule providing for consideration of 2 measures, H.R. 4626, the Home Appliance Protection and Affordability Act, and H.R. 4758, Homeowner Energy Freedom Act, under closed rules. The rule provides each measure 1 hour of debate equally divided and controlled by the chair and ranking minority member of the Committee on Energy and Commerce or their respective designees, and provides 1 motion to recommit for each measure. There has been much talk this week about affordability and what can be done to push prices down. Republicans are working on lowering prices with bills like the 2 contained in this rule. H.R. 4758 repeals 3 sections of the so-called Inflation Reduction Act that were essentially subsidies for replacing natural gas appliances with electric-powered appliances. In particular, the so-called high-efficiency electric home rebate was intended to distort the appliance market by discouraging the installation of lower-cost natural gas appliances. Instead of leaning on subsidies, electric power appliance manufacturers should win the consumer over on their products, attributes, and merits. These appliance subsidies were the fruit of an ideology that demands the end of natural gas, the end of significant consumer choice, and the end of fuel competition. These subsidies were really intended to make it too expensive to not buy electric stoves and electric hot water heaters. Now, don't misunderstand me, Mr. Speaker. I do not begrudge anyone for buying an electric stove. That's their choice. Or an electric hot water heater. That should be their choice. Maybe that type of appliance works best for their household. This subsidy is really disappointing. We're taking taxpayer dollars and supporting one class of appliances over another, and even giving the subsidy to rich folks. This is just a recipe to increase inflation and make prices go up. You can't tell me that subsidizing electric appliances by, now you got to hear this, Mr. Speaker, by $4.275 billion would not cause relative appliance prices to skyrocket. Every day we can see how the so-called Inflation Reduction Act has been given one of the most paradoxical bill titles ever in the United States Congress. And this is because after passage, as we've seen, inflation ran rampant. And only recently has that inflation rate started to ebb. And that's because of the policies of this House and the Trump administration. Republicans are not, as my colleagues might try to tell you, Republicans are not trying to ban electric stoves at all. But some of my colleagues on the other side would try to abandon or eliminate certain fuel sources from being used. H.R. 4758 also repeals a section of the so-called Inflation Reduction Act to train contractors on how to install these electric appliances. While a contractor training program might have some use, it received a huge $200 million appropriation. Finally, this bill would repeal a $1 billion program that essentially tried to cajole states, counties, and cities into implementing a zero building code. Zero building code? This is an opaque emissions accounting scheme which attempts to have every building, whether it be a home, commercial storefront, industrial site, that they would be forced into either purchasing an equal amount of renewable energy or producing as much renewable energy as is consumed on site. Mr. Speaker, Republicans are bringing bills to the floor that repeal wasteful programs that I believe, certainly in the case of the Zero Energy Code section, would end up increasing the final cost for new homes. And when new home prices go up, everybody in the industry knows, that leads to increases in the cost of existing homes. And I'm sure some might ask, well, how can that be? Well, here's what happens. If you go to sell your house, you want to get the highest price available. If it costs 20% more to put a new house on the market, then all of the existing inventory goes up in price at least 18 to 19%, so that if you buy an existing home, your price goes up as well, because you as the seller want to maximize the amount of money you can get out of what is the largest, for most Americans, the largest investment they will ever make. This resolution would also allow H.R. 4626, the Home Appliance Protection and Affordability Act, to come to the floor. The bill is important to lower costs for all Americans. The Energy Policy and Conservation Act was enacted in 1975. Now, I don't know where my colleague on the other side of the aisle was in 1975, but I was still in high school. And at that time, we had a real shortage of energy in our country. We weren't producing enough, and we were relying on foreign sources. I would submit to you that the bill we're bringing up this week will save Americans money and energy in a more efficient manner than the 1975, my gosh, most Americans weren't even born, than the 1975 solution. Mr. Speaker, I don't think you were born in 1975. You look too young. He has confirmed that with a smile. What good is an appliance efficiency standard if small amount of energy is saved, but the cost of the appliance is out of the range of the average family? The Department of Energy has interpreted the Act's quote, economically justified and technological feasibility test to implement standards that barely save a consumer a couple dollars in electricity per year. If energy efficiency is great, but not when it leads to appliances that cost more than they save. The bill would put in a more exact standard. An energy efficiency regulation would have to forecast a saving of at least 10% of the appliance's energy consumption before a new standard is implemented. H.R. 4626 will certainly lower the costs of buying new shower heads, dishwashers, washers, and dryers for all consumers. I hope all members of this House support the passage of the rule and then the underlying bills. I urge a yes vote on the rule, and I reserve the remainder of my time.
The gentleman from Virginia reserves, and the gentleman from Massachusetts is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I want to thank the gentleman from Virginia for yielding the customary 30 minutes, and I yield such time as I might consume.
Gentleman's recognized.
Mr. Speaker, you got to love these Republicans. I mean, they have no problems with subsidies for big oil, for big tech, for big ag, or big tax cuts for multimillionaires and billionaires. But when it comes to helping consumers afford electric water heaters or stoves, all of a sudden they got a big problem. I mean, I just don't get it. I mean, that's where their attention is. I mean, you know, on going after consumers, making life more difficult for everyday working families. Mr. Speaker, tonight is the State of the Union, and I'm sure the President is going to come here and paint a very rosy picture indeed. He's going to say the economy is great, the tariffs are working, he's ending wars, not starting them, and he's going to spew all kinds of nonsense. The problem, Mr. Speaker, is the facts are the facts, and the fact is that his economy sucks. I just spent the last week at grocery stores, senior centers, and town halls. I went to food pantries and boys and girls clubs across Massachusetts. I spoke with people who are working hard and getting crushed. They're paying more for food, more for rent, more for utilities, more for health care. They're struggling, and they're watching Donald Trump pump the rich with more tax breaks, more giveaways to the billionaire Epstein class, while the rest of America struggles just to get by. And with all that going on, with families begging for relief, this is what Republicans bring to the House floor today. More bills about appliances. This Republican majority has brought up more than a dozen appliance bills. The lobbyists for the appliance manufacturers sure must be getting paid well, huh? And the worst part of these bills is that these bills would actually raise utility costs for consumers. Who asked for that? I mean, one of these bills is H.R. 4626, the quote, Home Appliance Protection and Affordability Act. Now, that's not the original name of the bill, though. No. The original name is the Hands Off Our Home Appliances Act. Now, these guys changed the name to slap the word affordability on there, but they didn't change a single word of the actual bill. And that's all this is, slapping on a word to pretend that they're doing something. It's window dressing, masquerading as an attempt to help real people because Trump and the Republicans know that their economy sucks. They know that the public perception is that all they care about is helping Wall Street get richer and helping billionaire CEOs rip people off because, well, to be honest with you, Mr. Speaker, that's all they seem to care about. And guess what? These bills are worse than doing nothing. They would make utility costs go up. I mean, Republicans are trying to gut popular energy and cost-saving programs at the Department of Energy. They would lower efficiency standards and prevent consumers from choosing the best products for their households. And by the way, last night in the Rules Committee, I was chastised by the gentleman from Virginia who was upset with me because I was asking questions that he said were too hard. He said the witness wasn't prepared and I was cross-examining him. He said my questions weren't fair. Well, let me explain to the gentleman why I asked so many questions last night. because this House has been turned into a place where you can hardly ask questions at all. This majority locks down the process, shuts out amendments, shuts down debate, and then acts offended when somebody tries to get a straight answer about what the hell is going on around here. This rule that we are debating today officially breaks the record. This is now the most closed Congress ever in the history of the United States of America. 117 times in this Congress, Republicans have advanced bills to the floor with no amendments allowed, including today. They just broke the record for the whole Congress, and we're barely halfway through. I mean, that is insane, Mr. Speaker. More than 8 out of 10 times we consider legislation under this majority, Republicans lock down the floor and allow 0 amendments. 0. That is stunning. That is a stunning break from normal, Mr. Speaker. Speaker Johnson promised transparency and more debate, but the numbers tell a different story. The Rules Committee, under Speaker Johnson, has helped block 82% of all amendments this Congress. 82%. That's over 3,300 amendments blocked so far in just over a year, including 95% of Democratic amendments, 57% of Republican amendments, and even 63% of bipartisan amendments. Now think of that. 63% of the time when a Democrat and a Republican decide to work together to improve a bill, they get told no, no. That's the exact opposite, Mr. Speaker, of what the people of this country are asking for. Republicans blocked votes on tariffs. We had to move heaven and earth. We had to finally force a vote after months and months of getting blocked. Republicans blocked votes on releasing the Epstein files. I mean, they sent us home early because they didn't want the Rules Committee to take another vote on whether or not to release the Epstein files. We had to use a discharge petition. That is unprecedented. We had to go around the Speaker of the House simply to get a vote. And right on brand, Republicans blocked votes on thousands and thousands of amendments designed to make bills better. Under this Republican majority, the Rules Committee has basically become a place where democracy goes to die. And what is this all about, Mr. Speaker? What is this all about? It's all about turning Congress into a giant rubber stamp for you-know-who, Donald Trump. Nobody in the House of Representatives is allowed to change a comma unless Donald Trump gives Mike Johnson permission. It's embarrassing. It's embarrassing, and it is a stain on this institution. Clearly, the Speaker of the House thinks he works for the White House and not for the American people. He's diminished Congress and turned his position into a pathetic echo of what it used to be. Shame on him and shame on Republicans who go along to get along even though their amendments are blocked and their voices continue to be silenced by their own leadership. This is now the most closed Congress in the history of the United States of America. And it's happening right here, right now, in real time, because Republicans want to protect Donald Trump by blocking votes instead of doing the job they were elected to do. It is pathetic. Mr. Speaker, this economy is a mess. Look at the polls. I mean, it's like 30% approval rating for this president. People are hurting. They want us to be on the floor legislating. They want us to be deliberating. They want us to be finding solutions, and that means voting on amendments to try to get this economy on the right track. And instead, we're shut out. We're shut out. Everybody is shut out because they're all too afraid of the guy in the White House. With that, I reserve my time.
The gentleman from Massachusetts reserves, and the gentleman from Virginia is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, first I'm going to take up the economy. Do I wish the economy were better, Mr. Speaker? Absolutely. Do I think the economy is better today than it was under the Biden-Harris administration? Absolutely. Do I think the economy is better today with the Republicans in control of the White House, the Senate, and the House than it was when the Democrats controlled all three? Yes, I do. Things are better. The Democrats spent so much money and said they were helping people to such a great degree that inflation went through the ceiling. It skyrocketed. And we're trying to get it down. And part of the way you do that is you limit some of the federal spending and you limit some of these programs that raised costs. I gave a dissertation earlier on how existing home prices go up when it costs more to build new houses. The same thing is true when you suddenly throw billions of dollars at having subsidies on only electric appliances. If you really want to help people have a choice, which my colleagues on the other side of the aisle indicated that's what this is what they're for, then you give a subsidy for everybody if that's what you want to do. I still think it's inflationary, but give it for everybody who wants to buy a new appliance, whether that be a natural gas-powered appliance, an electric appliance, or what other fuel source is deemed safe, then open it wide open. No, this was about restricting choices and giving subsidies only to one type of appliance, the electric appliance. And so, Mr. Speaker, the economy's better. These bills will help bring down inflation. It's not the end all to save all. It's not going to solve all the problems of the country. But step by step, Republicans are making advances on fighting the inflation the Democrats under Biden and Harris created. Now, let's talk about the rule. Oh, I guess I need to first defend myself. What I said was it wasn't fair to the gentleman who was there to testify. He was there to testify on two bills. And my colleagues on the Democrat side of the aisle, Mr. Speaker, want to talk about everything under the sun. Now, I think this also gets to their concerns, and they're entitled to complain all they want to about closed rules. I get it. But part of the reason that you have closed rules is to stop the same reason that we didn't entertain amendments last night. You've got to stop amendments that are merely put in to just be dilatory. You've got to stop amendments which are clearly not germane. We've got bills here, as my colleagues on the other side have told you, deal with appliances. But two of the three amendments that were offered to the Rules Committee dealt with cryptocurrency, not appliances. And in this country, we don't pay, whether it be coin or otherwise, we don't pay in our homes to have hot water or dishwasher or washing machine. So if the amendments had something to do with cryptocurrency being used for pay appliances in your home, maybe it would have been germane. They're not germane. The third amendment, offered a mere 30 minutes before rules began, gutted the bill. It wasn't a serious amendment. It said, oh, these bills, if they pass, only become effective if a member of the administration deems, yada, yada, yada. There's always something different. And I forget exactly what this one does, but deems that there's going to be world peace. I mean, that's not what it said, but they always put these kinds of amendments in, Mr. Speaker, and they're dilatory at best. And so part of the process in rules that we've adopted over the generations is to say, no, not going to allow that. Not going to bring that to the floor. And I think that's appropriate. In fact, as the Speaker knows or can learn of, I have long advocated for a much stricter germaneness ruling here on the floor. And rules needs to have a much stricter germaneness ruling. I think if it's not absolutely on point with the intent of the underlying bill, even if it's in the same code section, it shouldn't come to the floor. I've lost those battles over the years, but I have put in numerous amendments to the rules, which my colleagues on the other side of the aisle who now complain that we're not allowing enough amendments on the floor have opposed. And I submit if we got closer to Jefferson's Manual of Parliamentary Practice and Procedure in our germaneness rulings and single purpose of a bill, this place would operate a lot better, and maybe we could have more open debate on the floor, because right now, you put any bill on the floor, guess what you're going to talk about? You're going to talk about Donald Trump and how everybody hates Donald Trump on the other side of the aisle. You're going to talk about some issue that has nothing to do with the bill in place. That's not an appropriate way to run the body. And so the Rules Committee has to act as the gatekeeper and the referee, because the House as a whole, both Democrats and Republicans, have gotten sloppy with the way we do our rules over the last 50, 75, maybe longer, 100 years. I'd like to see us return to stricter rules on the floor and make the debate about the bill that's currently in front of us, as opposed to whatever a gentleman or gentlewoman taking the floor wishes to speak on. And with that, Mr. Speaker, I reserve the remainder of my time.
The gentleman from Virginia reserves, and the gentleman from Massachusetts is recognized.
Yeah, Mr. Speaker, I'm really at a loss for words. I'm just trying to contain myself because I've never heard such nonsense in my life. I mean, the gentleman speaks about Thomas Jefferson. He's looking at us right up here. And if he were, he's rolling over in his grave right now at the way this House is being run. And my friends should be ashamed of it. They should be ashamed of it. And he's talking about that amendments that were offered in the Rules Committee last night were dilatory. Well, let me read you one of them. It says, this act and the amendments made by this act shall not take effect until the date on which the Secretary of Energy publishes a certification that the implementation of this act would not result in increased costs for homeowners and renters. What the hell is dilatory about that? And the yada, yada, yada that the gentleman is talking about is affordability, And I don't care whether the gentleman can say as many times as he wants, and my Republican friends can say as many times as they want, that somehow this economy is great and doing much better. That doesn't make it so. I mean, look at the polls. The majority of American people think you're driving this economy into a ditch. I mean, people told me this last week when I was going throughout my district, what the hell is going on in Washington? Because all the Congress and this president seems to care about are the well-off and the well-connected, the Epstein class, if you will. The people who have lots of money, the big corporations. They get protected, they get tax breaks, they get all the benefits. And the rest of the people in this country get screwed. They're sick of it. That's why you're losing so miserably in the polls. People have had it. And to come onto this floor and defend not only this lousy economy, but to defend this rotten process, I mean, I got to tell you, I've heard a lot. I mean, this is indefensible. This is indefensible. I mean, again, if you don't like the amendments that are being brought to the Rules Committee, vote against them when they come to the floor. If you don't want to debate, then stay in your office, but let the rest of us be able to debate. But now you have crossed the line. This is the most closed Congress in the history of the United States of America. And all you can say is, well, we have an obligation to block amendments from the Rules Committee, I guess, that we don't like, that are inconvenient. I mean, I don't know what the hell is wrong with saying to the Secretary of Energy, if these bills, add costs to average consumers, then we shouldn't move forward with them. That's all. If the Secretary of Energy says, oh, they won't, then you can move forward with them. I mean, that's what the gentleman is calling dilatory. I mean, God almighty, what is going on around here? I mean, people are disgusted with what is happening here in Washington, and they have a right to be disgusted. Mr. Speaker, if we defeat the previous question, I will offer an amendment to the rule to bring up H.R. 7615, the Relief Act, to force the Trump administration to give back the money it illegally stole through its unconstitutional tariff scheme. Mr. Speaker, since the beginning of last year, President Trump has declared a series of bogus emergencies as pretext to pickpocket more than $165 billion from American consumers and businesses of all sizes, including small businesses, family-owned businesses, farmers, and everyday citizens. And in response, several small businesses sued the president, arguing that the president does not have the power to arbitrarily tax American businesses and consumers without an act of Congress. And last Friday, the Supreme Court finally ruled that a large portion of the president's tariffs are unconstitutional. And while, as Chief Justice Roberts wrote in his majority opinion, the power to impose tariffs is supposed to be controlled by Congress, Speaker Johnson and the vast majority of congressional Republicans have continued to rubber stamp President Trump's disastrous tariffs, even though they know that they're raising the prices of groceries, housing, and other everyday goods. In response to the court's decision, President Trump lashed out at the justices who ruled against him, even the ones he himself appointed, saying they are, quote, unpatriotic and disloyal to our Constitution, quote, swayed by foreign interests, and, quote, an embarrassment to their families, end quote. Who the hell speaks like this? What other president talked like this? It is shocking that anyone can defend these shameful words by this president. And Department of Justice lawyers in briefs filed during the case promised more than once to repay the tariffs if they lost. We have that in writing. I'm happy to share it with the gentleman and any of my Republican colleagues. Quote, if the tariffs imposed on plaintiffs during these appeals are ultimately held unlawful, then the government will issue refunds to plaintiffs, including any post-judgment interest that accrues, end quote. That's the Justice Department's own legal brief. Well, Mr. Speaker, the Trump administration lost. They lost big time. And now the president is trying hard to break yet another promise. And get this, when he was asked about the refunds, you know what the president said? He said, quote, we'll end up being in court for the next 5 years, end quote. Again, not trying to help average consumers or small businesses. We're going to stay in court so you don't get anything. You don't get a refund. However, if Republicans were to join with Democrats to defeat the previous question, we will offer an up or down vote to require the Trump administration to pay out tariff refunds that he owes in the next 90 days. Voting with us is a vote to ensure that President Trump follows through on earlier promises to give back the stolen money. The main issue that Americans are struggling with is the affordability crisis. People cannot afford food. They cannot afford rent. They cannot afford utility bills and basics. And tariffs are one of the primary causes of these rising prices. Republicans are always willing to bend over backwards to give tax breaks to their multimillionaire and billionaire donors, but when we talk about helping regular people, Republicans are nowhere to be found. But it's never too late to do the right thing. So I urge my colleagues to work with Democrats to ensure that the money that was illegally stolen is returned, and that in the future we return the money directly into the pockets of working families who have had to pay more for everything because of these damn tariffs. Mr. Speaker, I ask unanimous consent to insert the text of my amendment into the record along with extraneous material immediately prior to the vote on the previous question.
Without objection, members are reminded to refrain from engaging in personalities towards the president.
I didn't think I was. Mr. Speaker, at this point I would like to discuss our proposal. I would like to yield 3 minutes to the gentleman from Nevada, the sponsor of this bill, Mr. Horsford.
I thank the honorable gentleman, the leading Democrat from the Rules Committee. Mr. Speaker, for more than a year now, working members and families, I should say, have been forced to pay the price for Donald Trump's illegal tariffs. And let's call them what they are. Blanket tariffs are blanket taxes. They are taxes that the American people have paid. So what did Donald Trump and his tax propose when he offered these sweeping tariffs? Unlawful impact on the American people. He taxed your groceries. He taxed your baby formula and your strollers. He taxed the inventory sitting on the shelves of small businesses that are just trying to survive. In my home state of Nevada, families have paid nearly $1,800 more in the last year because of these unlawful taxes. That's a rent payment. That's childcare. It's a car repair, and it's groceries for families that are already struggling to get by. And my district has seen the real-world consequences. A neighborhood cupcake shop, a local brewery, coffee roasters who built their dream from the ground up, all forced to shutter their doors this past year directly because their costs have skyrocketed and their customers can no longer afford these high prices. Now the Supreme Court has spoken. The emergency authority that was used to justify these tariffs that are taxes that Americans have paid did not authorize this mess. In simple terms, this administration did not have the power to do it, and yet they did. Billions of dollars were illegally taken, in my view, stolen from the American people. Now, what are my Republican colleagues proposing? a bill on appliances. They want you, the small business owner, the working parent, they want you to have to hire a lawyer or to sue the federal government to get your own money back. Donald Trump himself said that you may have to litigate this for 5 years. 5 years? That's not relief. That is a bureaucratic maze. It's a rigged system designed to exhaust you, to outlast you, and to ensure that the little guy never sees a dime. Well, we have a solution. My bill, the Relief Act, does something radical in Washington. It makes the government fix its own mistake. It requires automatic refunds of all tariff payments from the last year within 90 days. No application, no protest process, no lawyer required. If the government took it illegally, the government must give it back, period. And to the businesses that receive those refunds, it's time to bring prices down for working people and families who stood by you and who kept you afloat. If Republicans block this vote, they are voting to keep your money. They are telling Main Street America, take us to court. They are choosing delay over relief and politics over people. Tonight, the president will stand in this very chamber and try to sell the American people on his economy. But working families don't need a sales pitch. They need relief. They need honesty. They need their money back. No more excuses, no more delays, no more courtroom battles. Let's return what was taken. Let's stand with small businesses. Let's stand with the working families. I urge my colleagues to defeat the previous question and to support the Relief Act. If you
Gentleman's
vote yes,
time has expired.
they vote to keep
gentleman's
life
time has
unaffordable.
expired.
This is a rigged system.
No longer recognized.
I yield the gentleman
The
additional
gentleman
30
is no
seconds.
longer
I yield
recognized.
additional 30 seconds.
For a second time, members are reminded to refrain from engaging in personalities towards the president.
Mr. Speaker, the
The
personality...
gentleman is recognized for 30 seconds.
Mr. Speaker, the president has disregard and disrespect for the American people when the Supreme Court told him that his actions were illegal, they were unconstitutional, and it's time to give the American people their money back, to give them relief. Not disrespect, not disregard, but their money back. So I urge my colleagues to defeat the previous question and to support my bill, the Relief Act. By voting yes, you vote. If they vote yes and deny me the ability to bring forward the Relief
Gentleman's
Act,
time has expired.
they're keeping your life
The gentleman's time has
more
expired.
unaffordable. With
The
that,
gentleman is not
I
recognized.
yield.
For a third time, members are reminded to refrain from engaging in personalities towards the president. With that, the gentleman for Virginia is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. You know, it's interesting they bring up this PQ, defeat the PQ, and we will present this other bill. And let me explain to the folks back home. I know the Speaker understands this, and my colleagues, I think, understand this. That is in the form of an amendment and adding to the existing bills in the rule that's not germane to either of the two bills in the rule. So we talk about, you know, trying to follow the rules and do all of that. And in this case, I'm going to actually agree with my colleague on the other side of the aisle who said, there's Jefferson looking down on us, and if he saw the way we were operating, he would be disgusted. I happen to agree with that. But never in my years in Congress have I heard my colleagues on the other side of the aisle say that they want to return to using Jefferson's Manual of Parliamentary Practice and Procedure as the exclusive way to operate here. Now, I, for one, would accept that. I owe a lot to Mr. Jefferson because I learned Jefferson's Manual of Parliamentary Practice and Procedure while I was a member of the Virginia House of Delegates, and that knowledge ultimately led me to being the majority floor leader for my party. But never have I heard my colleagues on the other side. Now, I've heard Mr. Webster of Florida say very positive things about Jefferson's Manual of Parliamentary Practice and Procedure, and I think that Mr. Massey would be agreeable to go along with just having this place operated under Jefferson's Manual of Parliamentary Practice and Procedure, and I have advocated that we get a lot closer to Jefferson than to the wild, wild west that we have now, where amendments can be offered willy-nilly on the floor if it's an open rule or brought to the Rules Committee that have nothing to do with the underlying legislation. And that's what the PQ does as well. Offers a completely different bill on a completely different matter. And it's fascinating to me as I watch this, and my colleagues on the other side are very skilled at this. It's fascinating to me, Mr. Speaker, that it's always about the political issue of the day. They play great politics. I wish they played as good at legislating as they do at politicking. I like legislating, and I wish we did more of it around here. But this is the system that we've grown into. And I will join them in advocating for all kinds of reform as we come to the next rules adoption at the end of this session, or at the end of this term. I look forward to working with them, if that's what they really want. But I think it is political lip service and not sincere thoughts of following the direction that Mr. Jefferson set forth after studying 400 years of parliamentary practice and procedure that he put forward when he was Vice President of the United States and as the presiding officer over the Senate. So I submit to you, Mr. Speaker, that these are fine bills, that this rule is fine, and that the half an hour afforded to my colleagues and friends on the other side of the aisle is often used for political purposes, and that's what we're seeing today. It's for political purposes. But that doesn't mean we should not vote for this rule, and it does not mean that we should not vote for these bills. I reserve.
The gentleman from Virginia reserves, and the gentleman from Massachusetts is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I can hardly believe my ears. The gentleman said he wants to legislate. And you could have fooled me, because as far as I can tell, the gentleman's voted for almost every single, virtually, if not every single closed rule that has come out of the Rules Committee. 117 closed rules he's voted for. In the committee and on the floor. 117 closed rules, no amendments allowed at all. No amendments, and a lot of them were germane. And now we're hearing that, oh, well, we're trying to just manage this House better. My Republican friends now regularly do not even call for amendments. They basically let everybody know that, whatever you submit, we're going to turn away, we're going to block, because we don't want any amendments at all. I mean, really? Is that the process that my friends are defending? I mean, I think what I just heard the gentleman say for several minutes, a lot of words, basically trying to justify why the American people don't deserve a refund as a result of Trump's illegal tariffs. I mean, okay, if that's your position, fine. I actually think the American people deserve a refund. They deserve a check. Small businesses deserve a check from this president's illegal tariffs. And that's what the Supreme Court has said. They are illegal. And the gentleman has talked a lot about appliances as if that's what's on everybody's mind. I don't know about in his district, but when I do town halls, the first words out of my constituents' mouth are not shower heads or water heaters, or stoves. I mean, they're worried about prices rising all across the board. And they also want us to talk about real serious challenges that we're faced with here, not just issues of affordability, because right now, right as we gather here today talking about appliances, President Trump is ramping up toward a strike against Iran, a war. And reports say that his national security team is telling him that the U.S. military could be ready to hit Iran within days. And they're openly talking about a massive, weeks-long campaign. Why? They are suddenly claiming that Iran is a mere week away from having the material to make a nuclear bomb. Sounds like what happened last year, if you remember. In June of 2025, Trump said that Iran was weeks away from getting a nuke. And what happened? The administration proceeded to bomb Iran. The White House spent the entirety of last summer telling the world that Iran's nuclear facilities have been, quote, obliterated in a strike that the U.S. conducted. Those aren't my words. Those are the words of this administration. They said obliterated over and over and over again, obliterated. It's still up, it's still up on their website. So which is it? If Iran's nuclear facilities were obliterated, then why are we sprinting toward another war based on false claims about weapons of mass destruction? And if they weren't obliterated, if that was all political spin to make their strike sound more successful than it actually was, then why should anyone trust the judgment of the people now pushing us towards escalation? This is how disasters start. Not with a clear plan, not with honesty, but with a president who thinks foreign policy is a reality show and human lives are props. So let's be clear about what is at stake. Americans in uniform, American families, a region that could explode, and an economy that working people are already struggling to survive, where a wider war can send energy prices soaring and make life even more expensive for everybody back home. Congress is not a rubber stamp. It should not be a rubber stamp. The Constitution does not give one man the power to drag this country into another war on a whim. De-escalate. Get serious about diplomacy. Tell the truth. And if the president thinks he needs a war, he can come to the people's house and he can make his case out in the open where the American people can see and hear and judge it. And then let's wait, and then wait to let us vote on it. Because if Congress, after all, who decides where and when to go to war? Not the president, it is Congress that is to decide that. And again, given what is potentially about to happen, you would think that we would want to have that debate here. You would think that people, I don't care which side, maybe even if you want to go to war with Iran, you would think you would want to have that debate to convince the American people that it's the right thing to do. You would think you would want to go on record as voting for that war. I think it's a terrible mistake, but you would think if you felt the opposite, you would want to be transparent and open about it. And guess what? Nothing. Yeah, phony bills on appliances, on stupid stuff. When people are hurting, every day because they can't afford the basics, and we're on the verge of going to war, and this is what we're doing. This is what we're doing. Appliances. Give me a break. I reserve.
The gentleman from Massachusetts reserves, and the gentleman from Virginia is recognized.
Well, Mr. Speaker, there they go again. I mean, it's just amazing. It is. It's fascinating to me. I love the governmental process. I have since I was a kid, and it's just interesting to watch how all this does. First, let me just say, I would appreciate it if my colleagues would not put words into my mouth. The gentleman said something along the lines of that I didn't want to do refunds. I said nothing of the sort. I talked about how their amendment was not germane. I talked about how Jefferson wouldn't like the way we run things. I talked about how, this defeating of the previous question, they would offer an amendment on something that had nothing to do with the appliances, and now we take a rule on 2 appliance bills, and look, they want to say we should be debating other things. That's fair game, but we're taking 2 rules on appliances, or a rule on 2 appliance bills, and suddenly, this is really germane, Mr. Speaker, we're making it about war in Iran. Well, let me make this perfectly clear. I don't think Iran gives one iota of concern. I had to clean up my language, Mr. Speaker. I don't think Iran cares about what kind of appliances the American consumer buys. American consumers care, but I don't think Iran cares, and by golly, we're not going to war over appliances in Iran. Now, there's lots of other things we can talk about, and I do believe that we should be talking about other things as well, but that's not what's before us right this minute. What's before us is a rule dealing with 2 bills that deal with lowering prices on appliances, and that's what we ought to be dealing with. And clearly the bills are not so bad, or my colleagues on the other side wouldn't want to talk about everything but those 2 bills. Now, they talked about it a little bit. I give them credit for that. But, Mr. Speaker, I think we have beaten this dead horse, about as much as it can go. And so I would submit to you, Mr. Speaker, that I will reserve, but I am prepared to close.
The gentleman from Virginia reserves, and the gentleman from Massachusetts is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, how much time do I have remaining?
The gentleman has 5.5 minutes remaining.
Okay, I will close because I assume the gentleman has no further speakers on his time, on his side. Mr. Speaker, I yield myself the remaining time. Mr. Speaker, what we're really voting on here is not just a rule. It's whether the House of Representatives is going to act like a real legislature or whether it's going to keep acting like it works for Donald Trump. Closed rules have become the norm around here. You know, as I said earlier, 3,300, amendments have been blocked. And many of them have been germane. And in fact, most of them have been germane. And the gentleman and other Republicans on the Rules Committee have just gone, it's just a habit. They vote no. They vote no. So I don't want to hear an argument about germaneness, because when amendments are germane, again, most of those that have been offered have been germane, of the 3,300 amendments that have been blocked. And that's what's happening here. We're getting lectures and lectures and lectures about legislating, and the bottom line is that, this Republican majority basically has thrown the rule book out. The hell with Jefferson, the hell with this institution, the hell with the Constitution. We're just going to shut everything down. And that's what we're doing here. And if the gentleman or anybody on the other side thinks the appliances are the most important thing in the world, fine. You can bring them to the floor. You know what? But, let us offer amendments. And respect us, and by the way, other Republicans who want you to bring more important matters to the floor. Like whether it's votes on war and peace, or votes on affordability, or votes on the tariffs, we ought to have those debates on the floor. And they're always blocked. We can't talk about those things. It is so disappointing. It is so sad, Mr. Speaker. The bottom line is, and it's not just Democratic amendments, but Republican amendments, bipartisan amendments, anything that might force a real debate or a real vote is blocked. And the message that it sends is simple. The leadership doesn't want accountability. They want control, total control. And that's why the exchange my colleague from Virginia, we had last night is so important. If Republicans are mad because members are asking hard questions, or we're talking about issues that may be, not necessarily relevant to the bills we're talking about, it's because we don't have any other chance to do so. And I get it, my Republican friends don't want scrutiny, they don't want daylight, they want us to sit down, shut up, and vote for Trump. Well, guess what? We aren't going to do that. We aren't going to do that. The bills before us today are a perfect example of what happens when you silence regular people and empower those at the top. Working families are getting squeezed by Trump's economic mess. Costs are up. People can feel it every time they swipe a card at the grocery store or open their checkbook to pay a utility bill. And instead of bringing serious cost of living relief to the floor, housing, health care, child care, prescription drugs, cracking down on price gouging, Republicans bring bills like this so that we can pretend that we're doing something when we're not. That's a scam. Protect the people at the top, stage a few votes for press releases, and then lie to the American people and tell them that the economy is going great. The people I represent are not buying this BS. They're asking us to take on the folks rigging the economy against them. They're asking for a House that debates and approves legislation, not one that takes orders and acts like a rubber stamp for the White House. They're asking for real relief from Donald Trump's awful economy, which is making life harder for regular families. Mr. Speaker, we have a president who wants to be king. And unfortunately, we have Republicans in this House who bow down to him. We have officials in this administration who have compared the House of Representatives and Congress to the Russian Duma, a legislative body in name only, but a body that just rubber stamps whatever the Russian leader, whatever Putin says. I don't want to be the Russian Duma. I want to adhere to the ideas and the ideals of Thomas Jefferson. We ought to be debating. We ought to have amendments made in order. We ought to legislate. We ought to behave like we're the United States House of Representatives. And we're not. And it is so disappointing. The precedents that are being set here are so disappointing. It's depressing what has happened to this House. And so I will say to my colleagues, vote against this rule. Another 2 closed rules. That's what we're getting here. No amendments at all, nothing. 2 closed rules, take it or leave it. You know, we have to do better. And I am so disappointed with my Republican colleagues who go along to get along, who are so afraid of being punished by the bully in the White House, who are so afraid of even changing a comma in a bill because there might be retribution. Well, we're all elected by the people of this country. We ought to start acting like it. We ought to start fighting back. We ought to start legislating and deliberating. We ought to restore some dignity to the House of Representatives. And with that, I yield back the balance of my time.
The gentleman yields back, and for a final time, members are reminded to refrain from engaging in personalities towards the president. The gentleman from Virginia is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I know it might be hard for folks back home to follow as they're watching this on C-SPAN, but this is about a rule to bring 2 small bills to the floor of the House. I'm not arguing they're the biggest things in the world. They're smaller bills. That's true. That criticism is fair. But everything else that's been thrown into the debate today is not relevant to what we're debating. It's just an opportunity for politicizing everything that the other side of the aisle thinks is wrong. And look, we have freedom of speech. They can do that in lots of places. And I would hope that someday we would return this floor to talking about the relevancy of the issues before us, as opposed to having a free-for-all. But a free-for-all is what we got. But let me talk about, because I believe strongly in doing that, about these bills. These bills will roll back some things that were putting pressure on natural gas appliances, saying that if you wanted to buy one, I guess you could, but you're going to end up spending more money. Getting cities and counties and states to say that, you know, you have to have a zero net sum if you were going to put in some kind of an appliance, that you wanted the buildings, whether it be a home or a factory or a school, that they need to be zero sum. Either buy credits somewhere or come out with a zero sum, but you can't use fossil fuels, in particular natural gas in this case. I think these bills correct that problem. These bills help in a small way with the economy. Now, it's amazing to me the things that can get said on this floor, and my colleague probably would agree with me, except that we see things differently, because they keep talking about this terrible economy. And I wish it were better. I've never said it was at its peak or where it ought to be, but I will tell you that it is much better than it was under the Biden-Harris administration, that the inflation, so-called Inflation Reduction Act, actually caused a huge spike in inflation. The American people are still paying the price for that. They want to blame it on Trump because he's been in office now for 13 months, but the problem was created in the Biden-Harris administration, not in the Trump administration. And the Trump administration and this Republican majority, small as it is, has been fighting day in and day out to bring down those costs on numerous fronts. But today, we're not here to talk about every front out there or whether we want to go to war or not go to war with Iran, and that should be debated by the House, but about 2 appliance bills. And that's what I'm speaking about. And the fact is, as Jefferson looks down, they wouldn't have to worry about closed rules if we operated closer to Jefferson's Manual of Parliamentary Practice and Procedure, and I look forward to moving us in that direction and working with my colleagues. But first step is to pass this rule on 2 simple appliance bills that will make things a little bit more affordable. Hopefully make them the appliances a little more efficient. I mean, I had a constituent talk to me a number of years ago about some of these regulations coming out where she was having to take a garden hose and fill up her dishwasher because in order to be efficient, they weren't allowing so much water to be put into each load of clothes. It's that kind of silly thinking they're trying to stop and make things better for the American consumer, to make things more affordable, to make things just a little bit better. And if we can take a half a step today and a full step tomorrow, eventually we can get this economy that was totally screwed up by the previous administration under Biden and Harris. We can get it back on track to serve the American people. And with that, Mr. Speaker, I yield back the balance of my time and move the previous question on the resolution.
The question is on ordering the previous question on the resolution. Those in favor will say aye. Those opposed say no. In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it.
Mr. Speaker, Mr. Speaker,
For what purpose does the
I'd
gentleman
ask for the yeas and nays, please.
The yeas and nays are requested. Those favoring a vote by the yeas and nays will rise. A sufficient number having risen, the yeas and nays are ordered. Pursuant to Clause 8 of Rule 20, further proceedings on the question will be postponed. Pursuant to Clause 12A of Rule 1, the chair declares the House in recess, subject to the call of the chair.